What is going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of Roads to 1000 ELO. Now, we are back up to 620 ELO, so we have fallen as low as 530, but we have managed to build ourselves back up. Now, before we get into the games, if you do enjoy this sort of content, please make sure you like and subscribe. I would love to grow this channel as much as possible. And without further ado, let's get into it and I will see you on the chessboard. Okay, so as you can see, I will be reviewing the two games that I have already played. And I thought it would be a really good way for me to go through the game, go through my thought process, and then we'll go into the engine and we'll see what the engine is saying. So essentially, I was at 614 ELO. This game was played after my last episode. So yeah, let's get into it. So we have started with pawn to d4. Our opponent replied with e6. I have moved my knight to f3, basically just doing the basic developing London moves. Now my opponent has decided to jump the knight in, and I just thought, you know what, let's just build the pyramid. I couldn't see any danger of the knight, and I know there are sometimes cases where they bring the queen out or do some early attacks. So for example, he could move his queen here, basically attacking and going for this sort of checkmate. So that was something I was aware of. However, he decided to go in a different route, and he basically just pushed his bishop to b4. So I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna block it with my c pawn, and this is also a London move anyway, so it was something I was happy to do. He moved his bishop back, and at this point I just thought, you know what, if he is to take my bishop here, because of the cause that I have got for the London system, I knew me taking back with the pawn it's not a big problem at all, and I wanted to get rid of his e4 light squared knight. So I just thought, you know what, if I just develop, maybe I'll be able to get him to take his knight off. Instead, what he decided to do was to protect his knight, which is absolutely fair enough. And at this point, you know, I was thinking of what to do, so I just thought I would just take this bishop. In hindsight, I wish I'd done a developing move, and a move that feels a little bit more natural in the London system, i.e. moving my bishop to d3 and putting extra pressure on this knight, and basically asking my opponent what he wants to do with the knight, since I would have had two attackers, and he would only have this pawn as a defender. So I feel like this is a move that I probably done out of panic, just to get rid of this bishop, even though his bishop was putting pressure on my bishop, but it wasn't doing anything else. So it's something that I probably should have just chilled out with. So I have taken the bishop. I have given him the double pawns, which might have also been a thought process of mine. I thought, you know what, double pawns sort of in front of his king, it's something that could work in my favor. So I have decided to take the knight as well, which he has taken. Again, it's a move that I wasn't fully happy with looking back at it now, because it means he takes the knight with tempo on my other knight, which means I'm having to drop back and my position is quite passive. So he then builds his center furthermore, and at this point I have decided to move my pawn to c4. Now this is an idea that is within the London system. However, I know that once you move your pawn to c3, moving it back again to c4, it just doesn't seem like a great move overall. But my thinking behind this move was that if he was to take, I can take with my bishop and essentially develop my piece whilst taking the pawn back. And also having this diagonal looking, you know, might make him think twice about castling. So yeah, moving on, he did end up castling. I decided to move my bishop to e2. Essentially, I was preparing to castle myself, and that's something I was thinking of in the long term. Obviously, I couldn't move my bishop to here because of the pawn. So this was the only square I could basically move my bishop to. So he brings the queen out, essentially looking at this pawn, even though it is only protected by my king. You know, he had a double battery, going around here. So I thought, what can I do? and I simply decided to move my rook forward, which, yes, it means I can't really castle, well, I can't castle this side anymore, but it was something I was happy with. Now, when it comes to castling in London system, that's something that I'm still trying to figure out when to castle, because I know there's so many moves that tell you, you need to move here or move there, and there's like a 8 to 10 sequence before you can castle. So that's something that maybe I might be looking to doing as a in-between move, if you will. But anyway, we have protected this pawn. My opponent decides to move his queen, essentially going after this pawn. I've decided to move it forward. So then he moves his knight, which I know it doesn't really do anything. Yes, you could come here, but he doesn't really pose any major threat, because if he was to come here, going into any of those squares, he would have been taken. Going here as well, that could be a bit of an interesting one, because if I was to take, he would have taken, and that could pose some problems. But I've decided to essentially push the pawns and go after his queen, which in hindsight, looking back at it now, I have focused too much on trapping the queen, which you will be able to see in a minute. So he pushes his pawn. I was thinking whether he wants to fianchetto his bishop, but instead I have decided to just push the pawns forward even more. He does go after this pawn and attacking it twice, but I've ignored it, because I thought, let's just go after the queen. I knew he's not able to take this pawn because it was protected, so he decided to move his queen by 1 square, and I have decided to deal with this problem of him pushing the bishop by basically saying, hey, if you want to take this bishop, I'm happy to trade. So he moved his bishop back. I've decided to basically move my queen out and look whether there are any ideas to potentially attack on this diagonal if this pawn wasn't there. He moved his rook, and then I decided to castle. Yes, it's a very late castle, and I was having a conversation with someone earlier. If we go back to a few moves, when I was in this position, what I could have done, instead of worrying too much about this pawn and protecting it with this rook, I could have just castled, because if I was to castle, I'm essentially doing the same thing. I'm protecting this pawn and I'm getting my king out of the center. So it's just something I wasn't thinking of, and the reason for that was because I was so scared of this battery and having 2 pieces on this diagonal, where I thought, I'm not too sure whether there are any other hidden tactics. So that's why I basically opted against it. So let's just reload and go back to the current position. So he moves his bishop back and my queen. I then castle. He then decides to go after my queen. I obviously moved to basically still keep an eye for this pawn and keep everything protected. So as you can see, I have basically created a massive pawn storm anyway. He moved his queen more. I've decided to attack it again, and I feel like at this point it was just a game of cat and mouse where not much was actually changing. So yeah, I've decided to then develop my bishop into a better square. I saw this pawn, yes, being protected by the rook, but if the rook was to move, then I can basically go for it. So, and I've also noticed what I should have done when he moved this pawn. I don't know why I didn't just take here, because that's basically a free pawn, but I guess I was too caught up on getting his queen trapped to the point where I just wasn't making the right decisions. So he takes, I take again. I thought we were going to trade bishops, but I decided to go after his queen once again, and then I decided to basically trade the bishops and pushing the pawn furthermore. And at this point I realized that perhaps I won't be able to save this pawn, so I just thought, okay, let's just take. And once he took with a check, I just moved my king away. He took the pawn back, and I just thought, you know what, this rook over here is causing me a bit of trouble. Let's just get rid of it. And then I try to basically trap the knight. He's threatening a checkmate idea, because I've obviously been checkmated like this before, where he's got his knight pointing here, and if his queen was able to take this pawn with, you know, extra pieces being here, it would have been very difficult for me. So I decided to I thought of a brilliant move, which I'm very happy with. I basically pinned his queen to the king, and I knew at this point I'm winning his queen, which will make the game a lot easier. So in a lot of these games, and I noticed since I've switched to 15-minute games, my games are a lot longer, and it's all about me waiting for the mistake to happen. And at this game, it was in this moment where I realized I'm gaining advantage. So he decided to take the rook as he would to maximize the exchange. I took his queen, and I'm up 3 points of material. So he has dealt with his knight being under attack as well. I've decided to give him a check, and basically just reroute my knight away from the bottom first rank and try to bring my pieces closer to his king. So he decided to give me a nothing check. Essentially, I move my king, he goes after my knight, and I've just checked my opponent again, because there was another tactic where if he was to take, I'm able to check again, and as you'll be able to see, I've given him a double check. Sorry, not a double check, but essentially I've checked him again with my knight, and that's gonna give me his rook. Now I remember in this moment I was very stressed, because I thought, oh my god, can you not just take my queen? But of course he can't, because he's under check, so you had to deal with this to begin with. So he took my knight, I took his rook, and at this point I'm 5 points up in material. Yes, I'm 3 minutes down, but in a 15 plus 10 minute game, that's not as much of a disadvantage, and it was a game where I felt a lot better. So he took my passed pawn. Now as you can see, I have a huge advantage. However, the problem I had was I only had 3 pawns and my opponent had 5, I believe. So it was interesting. But I've decided to basically go after this pawn, try and put him in check. He defended. I moved my king up because I thought, you know what, this is an end game, and at this point I need to make sure my king is active to be able to win his pawns and try and make this game even easier for me. Now my goal was to also get rid of this pawn so I can push this pawn and get another queen on the board. So as you can see, he has checked me. I was a little bit scared about getting forked with the knight on the board, so I just moved my king away and basically trying to march closer to these 3 pawns, so I can start eating them, because once they are out the board, you know, the game is essentially won. So he checked me again, I moved closer, he's eaten one of my pawns, so I'm down to 2 pawns. I managed to eat one of his, and he's going after this pawn as well. So I thought, you know what, let me protect it, because if he's to have my pawn, then I'm taking his last piece, and then at this point the game is basically over. So he has checked me, I moved closer to his pawns, he moved back, I checked him, but now thinking about it, I wonder, oh yeah, I was thinking whether I can just eat this pawn, but my queen was under attack. So I checked him, and at this point I was able to win his last piece, and my opponent has resigned. So overall, I thought this game was basically won on 3 different tactics. It was the one where I managed to win his queen, the one where I managed to win his rook, and the last one which we've seen that has won me his last piece. So that was the game I was really happy with. So now let's get into the board and see what the analysis has to say. Alrighty, so as you can see, we did have 72.4% accuracy. We had no blunders. We've had 3 misses and 3 mistakes, a few inaccuracies, but overall we had 3 great moves, which I was really happy with. We played a solid game. Opening was very solid, and my end game especially 94.3%, which I was really happy with. So let's quickly get into the game and see what we could have done a little bit better. So we started with d4. All these moves were pretty standard, nothing too crazy. So yeah, the first decision I had was to basically offer a trade of knights and bishops as well. My opponent has basically decided to not do anything, and I've decided to take his bishop, which now thinking about it, probably maybe could have even taken the knight and basically apply double pressure, which this move is even better because what I then can do is I can jump my knight to the e5 square, and e5 square is very standard in the London system, so it's something that I probably should have thought about, because it means that if he is to take, I'm taking back and I'm staring into his rook with my bishop. So that's the first sort of, not mistake, but a more accurate move that I could have made. So yeah, we made an exchange. I moved back, which was the best move in this position. He pushed his pawn, and yeah, this is inaccurate because my pawn was already on c3 square. The computer does want me to check him on the h5, and that's probably just to prevent the castling rights. But then again, let's say if I was to play such move and go, if I was to do this, if he pushes the pawn, then all I can do is go here, and yes, it's stopping him from castling, but it's not something I would have played at this level, but it's still good to learn. So yeah, let's just go back a bit. So I've basically done my move. He castled, and yet this again was a miss, and the engine does want me to take and take again. Now the reason why I haven't done that was because my idea was to try and get my knight onto the c4 square, and I noticed that if I was to take, his pawn would stop me from doing that. So that was my thinking process. And again, instead of, like the engine is saying, instead of moving my rook, I could have just castled, but like I explained, I was a little bit worried about castling into the danger zone where he had double pieces. So yeah, he moved. That says it's not the best move either, but we are basically equal on the evo bar. I'm 0.28 up, which is not a massive thing, but it does want me to take the pawn anyway. Now I'm interested to see what would happen if I was to take, and then he takes here and goes after this pawn. I guess it just wants me to eat up the pawns. Oh no, it wants me to move my rook across, because if he was to, for example, take this, I can't really take that. That would be interesting. So what if he takes? Okay, so then he just wants me to take here, but then let's say he takes there. And then I can pin the pawn and win it back. That's interesting. But again, it's quite complex and it's not something I would have played. So yeah, we've gone down the pawn storming idea, which wasn't the best. Again, it does not like the move of pawn to c5. My opponent moved his bishop back. I moved my queen, which was actually a good move. He moved his rook, and yeah, at this point I decided to castle, which is not the best move. Avoiding his knight was a good idea as well, and at this point he's giving me a free pawn, which I didn't take because I was too focused chasing his queen. So yeah, again, I'm just making silly moves at this point. So yeah, you can see the engine is still saying to me, take that pawn because it's free, but he ends up taking, and it's not a free pawn. Instead it's a it's an exchange. I do wonder what would be the better move. It does say for me to move my rook here instead. So that's protected. That's protected. He can come here and basically go after this pawn. But then again, I move back and it's like a never-ending story. So yeah, he just wants me to basically, it's just gonna say to go back in circles, and then probably the game would have been called a draw. But if we just go back, so we took, now I've decided to move my rook, which says it's a great move. This one wasn't, and I just thought, let's just take. We pushed forward. That wasn't a great move from him, so I've taken. He took with a check. I move my king back. He takes the pawn. I take, he takes. And I wonder if instead of moving here, it does say it's the best move, but I wonder. Never mind, I was thinking whether this would be a good move, but I was protecting this pawn, so I couldn't really move my rook. So at this point he does try to fork me, but your boy had a very nice move in his pocket, so it's just something that he should have calculated. But yeah, with his queen being off the board, this game is so much easier to win. And the end game, which starts now, I feel like I've played as well as I could have. So yeah, I don't think I've made any major mistakes. Especially this tactic was quite nice, and it's something that I saw a few moves in advance where I thought, okay, his rook is attacking my pawn, my knight, sorry. What can I do to be a little bit more forceful? And I thought, okay, let's just move the pawn out the way, so then once he takes, I wanted to basically go pawn eating, and I knew this pawn was protected, so I just wanted to win this pawn essentially. But then I saw this move, which then led to a pretty nice fork. Now thinking about it, I probably made a mistake by moving my knight here, because it means he just wins the exchange. What I could have done instead was just move it here. Oh no, oh no, of course not, because that was a check. What am I talking about? This game was a few days, to be fair. So yeah, I've checked him, he took, and I've just won his rook. He won the pawn, and as you can see in this scenario, we were just making the right calls. This probably wasn't the best move, so I wonder what I could have done instead. Okay, it was probably just to threaten his pawn, because if he was to take, for example, I can come here, and then let's say he comes there, I attack, and then if he goes, I don't know, if he checks me again, I can eat this pawn, attack his knight, and then if he comes here, I can basically go there and threaten this checkmate. So that's interesting. But again, I didn't want to make so many pawn exchanges. So yeah, moving back, I've defended, he checked me, I moved towards his pawns, and at this point I've noticed I had this move in the bag. So yeah, that was a game that I felt was really good. I was really happy. I thought the percentage would be a little bit higher, but we got the win, which is the most important thing, and we are back to 614 elo. So now let's move on to the second game, where I've played with black pieces, and we'll see how we got on. So this time around, as you can see, we are with the playing with the black pieces, and I noticed my opponent was fairly low rated. So it was a game where, probably because they were a bit lower rated, I allowed myself to make a few mistakes. So yeah, let's get into it. So he started with d4. I decided to play the King's Indian defense. He made some interesting pawn moves which basically did nothing. And it's an interesting one because at this point I was a little bit lost because I was scared that he's gonna push this and kick my king out. So I wonder if a move like h6 would have been good for me, even though it's in an Indian game. So it's something that we're gonna have to look at in the analysis board. But I've just decided to fianchetto my bishop. I've castled, and once he took the center, I basically decided to stop him from pushing, which would have been a normal move for him to make. So he develops. I try to create the C3 break, E break on the E pawns, and I wanted him to take. Can't draw arrows apparently. Wanted him to take so I can take back and open things up a little bit. Trade queens, which would make the game quite easy. But he decided to push forward. I developed my knight. He pushed his. I didn't know why I made a double knight move. I guess I wanted to go after his queen. And then I pushed my H pawn forward, and that was basically to stop him from coming here, even though it does open up this file. So that was a move that probably wasn't the best from my end. So yeah, he wanted to go after my knight. I've moved my knight back to basically protect it. He tries to attack it again. I have defended it, and then he took, I took, which to be honest, I should have taken with the pawn, and then if he was to take, I would have had my knight in a much better space. Yes, it's not threatening anything, but it does take some squares away from the queen as well as the pawns. So it's definitely something I should have done instead. But I've decided to take with the knight, and it's giving me double pawns, and that's just because I've made the wrong choice of taking. So yeah, I decided to have a double fianchetto bishop, which, to be honest, it wasn't the best move. I knew I couldn't get to this pawn because this bishop was protecting it, so I just thought, let's just fianchetto my bishop and see what we can do. Also, the plan was to push this pawn, and then if he was to take, I can take back again and have my bishop on a different square where it's a little bit more active. So he pushed this pawn. I've decided to do just that. He castled, which just didn't seem right at all because of the open area. So I took, he took back. I moved my queen, essentially trying to see if I can basically go after this pawn once his knight moves. So he moved his bishop out the way. It's still protecting the pawn, so I decided to give a check. I wasn't quite sure why I've done it because this check doesn't really do anything. So he moved his king. I basically tried to bring the rooks to the center because I know that's what you're meant to do. He moved his rook forward. I've basically tried to open up the center a little bit because the position was quite crowded. So he's gone after my queen, which I moved back. He took the pawn. I took it as well, and I noticed at this point my king is also getting exposed. So yeah, I moved my queen back again, essentially trying to protect this pawn because I knew once he took, I could take back, and then I'm looking at this pawn. I'm looking at potentially then taking the knight. So yeah, his knight moved. I decided to take. He took back. I moved my queen away. I knew I'm not threatening to take anything besides this pawn, but I just wanted to get some sort of advantage going. So he moved his bishop, and I knew at this point my bishop wasn't really doing anything, so I have decided to take it. Now he took back. I took the pawn. He took this pawn, and I knew I can't take this knight because obviously the queen was there. And at this point I noticed my bishop was on a really nice diagonal here, and all I had to do was basically just lose a pawn, because once I do that I have a checkmating idea. So he decided to take, and I knew this was risky because he could have stopped my whole attack by taking this bishop. But I do feel like in this level of chess, people won't be exchanging their rooks for bishops, because we are told that, you know, rooks are better and they are worth more points. So yeah, it's something that I wasn't even considering. So he takes, I move my queen up one square, essentially lining up this checkmate on the b2 square. My opponent basically ignores the threat. I'm guessing he's trying to go after this bishop because the knights and the bishops are of the same value, but instead I managed to get this nice checkmate in. So yeah, it was a game that I've won. So we are now back to 620 elo, hopefully looking to build from there. So yeah, let's see what the analysis is saying and things that we could have improved on. So on this game I was expecting a fairly decent score, however it's given me 50.8% accuracy, and it just, maybe it seems like I'm not as sharp with the King's Indian position with the black pieces. So yeah, let's just get in review on the go. So my opponent has decided to control the center with his d4 pawn. Now I wasn't sure whether he's gonna be playing a London or anything like that, so I've just opened up with the King's Indian defense. Now I wonder whether in this position I could have played h6, whether that would have been a good move. It's good, but it says I had a better move, so let's see. Okay, it's potentially to strike back in the center. I wonder whether that translates more into like a Pert's defense, so maybe you guys can let me know. But yeah, I've decided to fianchetto my bishop. He moved his queen, I castled, bog standard stuff. And interestingly enough, it says d6 is good, but it's not the best move because it wants me to push here. Now, what happens if he takes? What's my plan of action? Okay, I'm guessing it's to go here, win the pawn, and threaten the queen. But what if, for example, he was to move his queen one square to stop me from taking? Oh, okay. Then I can take here, and then he has no time to take because his queen would be under attack. And if he does go back, what can I do? I can move back and attack both of those pawns, none of which he can't defend them both at the same time. And then if he moves here, it'll be even more annoying. I come here, and then if he does try to go after this again, I guess I can just win this pawn. And then if he does do anything like that, then it just means he's so open, and I can just, yeah, that all makes sense, to be honest. But again, it's not something I'm seeing straight away, especially, you know, these moves. I mean, I suppose I should have seen it come in because of the attack and the uncovered attack, but this just seems so scary because it seems like I'm just losing a piece. But anyway, let's just go back to the position. I castled, I've done this, and then I decided to break with the e pawn. Essentially I just thought, okay, let's say he takes, I take, and then if he was to take, I can take back and I have a nice open file. But things don't always go as planned, so he pushed, and I do struggle with what to do once they push forward. I'm not sure whether, for example, pushing. Okay, that looks like the better move. again, I'm so caught up on developing where these sort of moves just feel like I'm pushing too many pawns. I guess he would have taken, which would meant that I was able to develop my knight and I have a decent position. Now, let's say he does make, I don't know, a developing move of his own. Yeah, I was literally thinking whether pushing deep on would be better for me, because if he takes, I could take. That's so interesting. So he takes. Instead, it wants me. Oh, okay, double attack. I'm here. That's so interesting. How it still wants me to. I'm gonna lose this pawn regardless, no? So let's say I come here. And then what if he takes this pawn? I guess then I can take. He takes. I would take. And now he's having to, yeah, either move this back or push forward. It's all so complex. It's so interesting. But then again, this knight would be absolutely vicious, because if he does try to take, I'm probably okay with losing this because I can just go here, no? Says it's not the best move, but it's probably a move I personally would make in this situation, because if I'm taking, then at least, you know, at this point I'm 4 points up in material. But again, this is all if buts or maybes. So yeah, so he pushed forward, I've developed, he pushed again, and at this point I was playing really well, and okay, I understand. So I basically decided to move, push my H pawn forward because I was so worried about this. So instead, I wonder what was the best move. Okay, to strike in the center as planned. What would happen if, for example, if instead of this, he moved here to attack my knight? Okay, let's say I move there, and then he comes here. Then what do I do? I guess if he takes double pawns, not ideal. Yes, I can come here, go after his queen. Takes. And then we just carry on breaking in the center, well, trying to create a pawn break. Interesting. So it just wants me to not be scared of putting my knight on the rim. So I push my H pawn. He develops, which is a mistake. I moved my knight back, which is just not a great move. So again, it does want me to take, but it just, these sort of sacrifices is not what I'm prepared to do. Because now it says, I'll be very honest, in this situation I probably would have ended up taking. But it wants this idea. Let's say he moves back. I can then take, and if he comes here, I can go there and basically fork in his rook and the bishop. I don't understand why he would do that though. Surely would he not just prefer to save his bishop? I guess if he goes here, then at least he's getting my knight back for the piece. And it's not looking so miserable for him. So now I can... Whoa, Okay, what's this idea? Take. No. Oh, okay. It just wants me to do this. But then again, I'm not gonna take this. Yeah, I guess these hidden tactics of like he moves back. I take. Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely something I need to like do more hidden puzzles, like hidden tactics. We move back, he takes, I take, and like I said, you know, the best move was to basically just take with the pawn. Because it takes, I take back, and I have a decent, you know, best position for my knight. So I'm just making these little mistakes in the game which didn't feel massive, but the engine didn't like them so much. Like for example, this move here, my whole idea was to win this pawn by pushing this pawn, and then once he takes, I take, and then I have some sort of like movement. But this engine is screaming at me to give this check, and I guess that's to also stop my opponent from having the castling rights. So I do understand that. So yeah, we push, he then castles, I take. This is all fine. Does not like this check because again it's a bit of a nothing check. It wants me to push my pawn instead. But let's say ooh, where were we? Okay, so also I moved my queen twice, which is not great. But let's just say instead I do this. Surely he can just take this for free. Oh no, he can't, obviously. Oh wow, my mind's getting frazzled. But yeah, I've done the check. I've decided to move my rook to the center, which it doesn't like because he just wants me to push the pawn. I move back, we've... Yeah, I just made a few tactical errors it seems, and then I know this was, it says it's a blunder because I could be missing a piece, but how is it? Hold on. So he doesn't want me to take. What does he want me to do with white? Come here. Oh, okay, and now I'm losing this. Right. And the only way to stop it is to trade queens. Because it takes. And he just comes in and wins my rook. Whoa, that's brutal. But again, I'll be very surprised if opponents at my level would see this tactic, you know? I thought this was a good move to basically open up this diagonal. And surprisingly, he was happy to give up the rook. So this... Oh no, because he's got this move, so that's not a checkmate. But again, you know, I found a way to checkmate him with a bishop and a queen, which is the only thing that matters. But I was a little bit disappointed to see such a low rated game. There were a lot of tactics, most of which my opponent or I probably would not have found, but I will be doing more puzzles regarding pins and forks and like the hidden attacks essentially. But because I've been doing my mate in 1s and mate in 2s now, which has helped, you know, in finding these tactics. So yeah, it's definitely helping, but we need to work on the tactics furthermore. And yeah, so that's gonna be it for today's episode. If you did enjoy this video, again, please do consider subscribing and liking, and let me know what you thought of the games yourself. I would love to build this community as much as possible, and you know, I'm loving showing you guys the journey of a chess noob, essentially, and showing you the highs, the lows. And I know sometimes it gets so frustrating for me when I'm doing well and then I've gone on this spiral of losing games. But now we are building this thing back up. So if you do enjoy what you see, please do show support. It would mean the world to me. But without further ado, I hope everyone has an amazing weekend, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care.